Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we're here with Yoshi. This is a 2005 Gen 3 that's been all over the internet because it's owned by Marco here, and he runs LusoOverland's. So I'm out here in Flagstaff. We've been bombing around off-roading, and we thought this would be a great time to shoot a video with his rig, talk about what he's done, and go through the whole build. So, Marco, how long have you had this thing?
I've had it for at least 5 or 6 years. I got it from Toasty Fab, who's a legend in the Montero community.
Yep.
He's the Montero godfather.
Yeah, we met with Adam earlier this week, so nice. And it's a 2005.
2005 limited.
Sweet. So let's talk about wheels, lift, and tires. What are you running on this thing?
Okay, so we've got Levels coil springs. They're the extra raised height HD, and that's dictated because of all the weight that I have up front. And then the suspension is kind of it's a work in progress right now. I think it's my 5th iteration of a suspension on this vehicle, and I've only had it on for 1 week.
Okay.
So it's in test mode right now.
So when you say what's been on there a week, you've got the Super Pro arms, and then you've got the Levels and the Conies.
Right.
So all of that is new.
Yeah. Okay. I had the Levels HD springs before, but they had 5 years of use, probably 30,000 miles, a ton of off-road driving, because that's primarily what I do with this rig. So I put on a new pair of the HDs. And then, yeah, the Coney shocks are brand new, and the Super Pro upper arms are brand new. So that's what's being tested.
You're looking at starting to sell these, right? Or you are selling them?
If it passes the test.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I love that. And that would replace the upper ball joint, and they're tubular. Looks like they bolt right in, and I mean, they've been running great today. So.
And then it comes with like the poly bushings already pressed in.
Oh, that's
so
nice. That's
that
really
saves
nice.
you all that time.
Yeah.
But this tubular design is going to be kind of a rare use point, I think. Not that many people will really have a need for it. Super Pro has another set of upper control arms that are not tubular, and they're more like just standard replacements that'll come with the ball joint and the bushings already pressed into it at a much lower price point, like half of the price of those, and that'll be good for 99% of people who don't need something tubular to clear like a bigger shock, for example.
Yeah, totally. And then wheels, these are Toyota 4Runner wheels?
Yeah, they came off of a 4Runner. I think 2015 and above is where you can find these. I don't know the exact name for them. It's either called the TRD Trail or the TRD Off-Road wheel, but it's a
7.5 wide
by 17.
Yep.
And the thing that I like about them is that they have this valve stem is protected by this extra metal.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And then you've done some work here. You've done some vinyl, and then you've got this Mitsubishi hubcap on here.
Right.
That's pretty slick. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, it just looked too like blingy, like too much chrome for me.
Totally.
So that's why I put the black vinyl decals on there. They're a company called TVD Vinyl makes those.
Gotcha. And then what are you running for tires?
Toyo AT3s. That's also pretty new. I've only had them for about 1,000 miles. They came on a 98 Montero that I bought recently, and so I threw them on here.
Okay,
and
sweet.
It's a 285 70 17, so basically a 33 by 10.5-ish around there.
Gotcha. And how do you like them so far?
Yeah, they're good. I had run the BFG KO2s before these, and those did great. I think these will be better in the snow than those. They have more siping on the tread. And so coming up here in the next month, we'll be getting our first snow, and so I'll be able to see what they're all about.
Sweet. And you're clearing all of that. So you've got a lift, but you haven't chopped up anything back here. You haven't done any cutting up in the fender.
No cutting. Everything. I try to avoid cutting always. I don't like it. Anytime people call me and they're asking for advice on lift and tires, I always suggest a tire size, wheel back spacing, all that stuff to avoid any kind of rubbing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Part of it is because this test suspension is sitting up higher than I want it to. I want it to be about 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch lower. And sometimes with a 33 at full compression, when you're going fast off-road and that lower control arm slams up, you may sometimes get the tire to hit on top of the fender well.
Yep.
So I've got extended lengths bump stops on there to try and help stop that.
Yeah, I saw that on this
and
side.
I don't know if that's gonna happen. I don't think it will with the amount of height that I have now, but it can happen if you don't have at least, I wanna say, 2 inches.
Yeah, I run those as well, and I found them to work pretty well.
Yeah.
So, and you're not getting any issues with the front bumper. You've got an ARB on the front, which I think are getting pretty rare to find. Is that right? Are they still making them?
I think so. I've had some people call me up recently, and we don't sell them, but I just point them in like the big box store direction, and sometimes it can take several months if they need to bring them in from Australia.
Totally.
But as far as I know, they're not discontinued. It's just that they might be out of stock in the US and you have to wait 6 months to get them.
Yeah, it's a process, and it's expensive to get something this big shipped over. And for those of you who are wondering, you can see a little bit of how it connects to the unibody here. It kind of bolts in everywhere it can, because it's kind of hard to fit these in there. But as far as bumpers that fit the Gen 3 that actually match up with the body lines and everything, this is pretty much the tops right now. I wish there were more options, but I mean, at least there is an ARB option.
Yeah, this is about it. Unless you're going to do custom fab like you did, you know, off the shelf, this is about it for bumpers for Gen 3s.
Totally. And then what are you running for a winch here?
It's a Smittybilt 12,500 pound. No,
Okay,
12,000
big boy.
pound winch. But you know, I looked at the specs, the size, the weight was identical with the 10,000. So I didn't see any reason to get the 10,000.
When you could have the same thing in a smaller package.
Yeah, and
Or bigger
especially,
thing in the same package.
you know, if I'm towing a camper or I have to recover someone that's a heavier rig and they're buried in the mud.
Yeah.
So I got the 12,000 and
then you got some aux beam lights up here in the front.
Yep, 5-inch aux beams. Those are pretty
sweet.
cool. And then you have to get an offset fair lead if you're going to run an ARB bumper.
Oh, interesting.
So the fair leads that come with most winches won't work. I mean, if you install them, you'll have a little lip of metal here where your winch line can rub up against.
Yeah, you don't want that.
And so you can either cut out the opening with like, you know, an angle grinder or something, or you can get an offset fair lead, which is what I did from a Factor 55.
Yeah, nice. That looks slick. What about armor up here in the front?
Yeah, so it's funny. Every time someone comes and visits me and shoots a video with Yoshi, it's always in some form of testing. And so
Well, that's the point of the rig. You're always trying to
right.
make it better.
And so the suspension is brand new. It's only got like 50 miles on it. And then same thing with the skid plates. So the company that we used to carry skid plates for a long time, Booz Bash Plates from Australia, they went out of business. And so we've been working on finding a suitable replacement. So what I have here is a prototype skid plate. It's made of 6mm aluminum, and it's got kind of those holes drilled out for it, inspired by like the Page Evo skid plate. And then I've got the oil pan skid plate on there as well. That's also 6mm aluminum, but the transmission skid plate and the transfer case skid plate that I usually run, those are currently off while we're having samples done. I was actually planning on putting them on later this week and everything.
Yeah.
And then the
Well, this
armor,
looks sweet.
the armor keeps going. Like
Yeah, I was gonna
there's
say, you've got a few things. So let's talk about the sliders before we
Sure.
get back underneath the car. I noticed these are attached to the factory mounts. And is this a custom job?
Yeah, this is a Toasty Fab.
Okay. Yeah.
So when this rig was his, he made these.
They look very similar to mine. I probably got my cues from him, even the way it's cut off here in the tube. But then, yeah, having this basically set up. But yours is not against the pinch weld. That's the difference. Mine actually sits underneath the pinch weld, so I think mine sits a little lower. But it looks like he just cut off those
Factory brackets.
the factory brackets and just positioned it. So, these don't look too scratched up. Have you ended up taking a hit with these?
Yeah, on the driver's side on Broken Arrow Trail in Sedona, I came down off a boulder and smacked up right here. And I knew this going in, having talked with other Gen 3 owners and things like that. When you're attaching to just the 3 factory mounting points on a, you know, unibody vehicle, there's some flex there.
Totally.
And so when the rock came up, it hit the slider, and then the slider moved up and hit the cladding. It didn't do any damage or anything like that.
Sure.
But for the guys that take Gen 3s on the Rubicon and things like that, what they end up doing is not only using the 3 mounting points on the body, but then they run like additional lengths of steel back to various parts and add more bracing.
Just grab whatever you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then under here, you've got one of my favorite items, because when you asked me, hey, what do we need in the Gen 3 world? I said, we need gas tank skids, because this gas tank is huge. So you've got a gas tank skid here. Is this a Booz one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, bummer. So they're no longer making this.
Right. I think we have a handful left in stock, and then
Get 'em
when
where
they're
you
gone,
can.
they're gone. And it's, I mean, on the rare chance that, I mean, your fuel tank is kind of at your breakover angle.
It totally
and so
is.
it's pretty easy to smack. And if you hit it hard enough and it dents up, You obviously lose fuel capacity, but the bigger thing is if it starts leaking, replacement tanks as of right now are still available from Mitsubishi USA, but they're like $1,000.
They're hard to find, and you can't find them in junkyards because junkyards poke a hole in them to get rid of all the gas and stuff. So yeah, that's huge. I've got that on mine. And then what are you running as far as rear suspension here?
Right now, it's the Levels HD coil springs, and then a poly lower pad. Okay. To help, because the rubber ones wear through pretty easily, especially if you have a lot of weight back here. And then right now that's the Bilstein 4600s, but that's going to be switched out to Coney's next week to match the fronts.
Okay, I'm curious how those will go. I have the Bilstein 4600s in the back of mine. And other than that, it's pretty stock back here. Looks like you've got some upgraded bushings and your alignment bolts work. The last bit of armor you have is right here, this rear HVAC control. That's also Booz?
It is, and that'll be something that we come out with as a replacement.
Okay,
because I like running the rear heat and climate control, all that stuff. So it's all tied into the factory coolant system. So if you get a leak there because you smack something coming off of something like a boulder and you lose engine coolant, you're going to overheat your engine if you don't notice.
You'll have it dripping out the back and you won't even notice. And then you've got the factory hitch, but this one sits up way higher and it bolts into the side versus the aftermarket ones that just bolt to the frame. So this is pretty strong hitch, pretty good hitch. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, you can't really see it underneath. You got 4.9 gears in here.
Right.
So you pulled those out of a Gen 3, early Gen 3, right?
Yeah, out of a 01, 02 XLS.
Okay. Yeah, that's rad. And then what are you running for a rear air locker?
It's a Harrop E-locker. I think it might have been...
It's an E-locker.
It's an E-locker made by Harrop, which I think just makes them under license from Eaton in Australia. And I think it was the first or maybe the second ever sold to someone in the US. And it's been fine. Like, it's been really good. I've been really happy with it. I got no complaints about it.
Yeah, sweet. Well, let's take a look inside and see what you got going on in there.
Cool.
All right, so in here, first thing I notice, you've got the seat cover that I've got. It's a great mod. It helps protect that seat because they all get worn out.
Right.
But you also have floor mats that actually fit. What are those floor mats?
Yeah, those are CGZ floor mats. We stock them at LusoOverland. You get the front row, the second row together as a package, and then there's a cargo mat for the back area separately.
That's sweet.
I believe they were designed around a Gen 4 possibly, but it's almost an identical fit. There's just kind of like a couple little areas that are slightly different on ours, but it's a fantastic fit for the options that we have out there.
Totally. And then what do you got going on over here? You got some gauges in the center, stock radio, which I still can't believe, but so these are temperature gauges that you offer at LusoOverland. And what do you have those hooked up to?
Yeah, those are made by a company called Engine Guard in Australia, and I think it's the coolest product. I've wanted that thing to exist my entire life, ever since I blew my first head gasket.
Nice.
And I was like, why wouldn't a car warn you when your temperature is getting really hot, other than the needle on the dash, which nobody looks at and which can go from like fine to pegged in a matter of a second.
And it's an idiot gauge. So.
Right. So those can monitor any temperature on your vehicle. It's just a ring terminal, and you remove a bolt where you want to measure the temperature, and you put that ring terminal, and then you put the bolt back in, and it's just a thermocouple at the end of that ring terminal. So I have 2 dual boxes, so I can measure 4 temperatures. So I have one on my engine cylinder head, I have one on my transmission near the pan, I have one on the transfer case, and one on the rear diff. So I kind of have a very stress-free, it's a lot of peace of mind. I know that I'm not going to overheat something because it's going to start blaring out like a loud alarm if I get too hot. Yeah,
the transmission one's the big one for me because there's no way in the ECU that I can find to get a transmission temperature, even if you have a scan tool out or anything like that.
Right.
So
for me, it's the rear diff is kind of the one that gives me the most peace of mind, because Gen 3's had a defect where the stub axles would pop out of the rear diff, lose your gear oil, and then that's pretty much the only way to ruin those rear diffs because they're so stout. And so
I had that happen with mine. I didn't ruin it, but I was leaking a lot of oil out of the back. So sweet. And then you've got some stuff in the trunk too. You call this a trunk. So back here, you've got some of these molly panels. I guess, would you call them molly panels or? either way, they're laser cut
Right.
aluminum, right?
Yep. Yeah. 3mm aluminum.
And these bolt into factory spots?
Yeah, there's no permanent modifications to the vehicle. They bolt in where your grab handles bolt in, and then the factory way that they install is just with double-sided tape on the top of this plastic panel.
Okay.
And that's the only way that I've been running them now. And I don't have a ton of weight on them, but guys do run bolts down on the bottom half if they're going to be running a ton of weight.
Sure.
But they've been fine for me like that. And there's also like a separate piece that can be a horizontal shelf that you
Sure.
can bolt up for extra storage.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to just utilize some space and have quick access to stuff. You can grab a med kit or an axe or
Right.
Fire extinguisher. Yeah, that's pretty slick. And then this is the floor mat that you were talking about in the back for the cargo space, which obviously would work if you don't have the rear seats out, but if you have the rear most seats out, you're gonna have
Right.
no
If you have the
problem.
third row seat in, you could.
There's nothing really you can do about
Nothing
that,
you can really do about
but
it.
this is sweet because it actually fits, because all the other ones I've seen, whether it be the front, the middle, or the back, you have to cut them to fit, and then they don't
Right.
fit that well. So, and then you got the classic quick fist right here for a handle, and then you've got this guy right here, this is something that I wanted to exist ever since I got a Gen 3, so that you can actually use the rear hatch. I have a whole video of how I made that work, but that's pretty slick. It's not as easy as just getting in there and tying a string. There's a whole mechanism.
Right.
And so pretty pleased that somebody came up with that.
Yeah.
Funny thing.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to some people yesterday that have a full build out in their Gen 3. And so you've got drawers and everything coming all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that really comes into its own, because if the outside handle breaks, which is pretty common because it's just plastic, normally the fix is to come in here, take this panel off, and then open your door. But if you've they've got
a
cabinets,
huge thing,
they can't even get to their panel. So that's
same with my setup. If this door is shut, it's really hard to get to this without removing a significant amount of stuff. And so, it's a nice convenience factor, but it's also, I mean, honestly, a level of security of knowing that I can actually get this door open and out. So yeah, so up front, you've got a bigger battery.
Yeah, it's a Group 27 dual purpose. So it's like a starting and a deep cycle. It's kind of a top of the line battery, super expensive. I, spent a lot of money on that, and I did it because of the winch. And it's got it's got 930?
Yeah, 930 cold cranking amps.
It's crazy.
But you can fit it in here.
Yeah, you don't need to change anything. It can fit a Group 27. The factory size is a Group 24. I should say Group 24F, and then this is a Group 27F. You can actually go up to a Group 31. I've seen guys do it if you get rid of this plastic battery box.
Okay, I was gonna say, but this fits in the battery box.
Yeah.
That's a nice upgrade for people who don't want to run duals. And then you've got some switch gear up here, or some circuit boards, I guess you could call it. Not a circuit board.
Like fused relay boxes that
fused
are
panel.
waterproof.
That's pretty slick.
Yeah, they were made by a company called Concours Specialties. I think they're in Ohio. I don't know if I would get those nowadays, because there's I think Oxbeam and all these companies on Amazon
make a great one.
have a similar product that's probably a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
At the time that I got those, switch pods and things like that had just kind of come on the market, I feel like, and or at least I didn't know about them. And so that's what I did, just because it makes adding accessories like lights and things like that easy to wire.
Totally. Yeah. Anything else under the hood?
Just a lot of maintenance, keeping it happy.
It's good.
And reliable, and other than that, I mean, no. And there's some circuit breakers over here for the brake controller for when I have my trailer hooked up.
Oh yeah, because you tow a decent amount with this.
Yeah, I used to be towing more, and then we got a QX56 that my wife drives, which is like a Nissan Armada.
Yep.
The big V8 with like 450 horsepower, and so that's kind of become the tow rig. So
Makes
this
sense.
has done a lot less towing now. I might just have like a small utility trailer that I haul every now and then.
Yeah. Sweet. So there's an overview. This thing is super clean. I've seen it in pictures on Instagram and stuff, and obviously I've watched some videos on your channel. But it's really, really well done. You're running 33s really well. I'm curious, top 2 or 3 modifications that you feel like you've liked on this.
I mean, it's tough because there's some things that I feel like you just have to do, if you're gonna be, I mean, Monteros are very capable, even just stock. I'm always surprised every time I take out a bone stock Montero. I mean, this Pajero Mini that we're playing with today blew my mind at how capable it was, right? So I don't want to say these like must-dos, but I feel like if I'm building a vehicle, it's obviously got to have some kind of lift. I like 32 or 33 inch tires. I don't like to go larger than that. I feel like there's more cons than pros, or more money than it's going to take to make it perfect. So I would say wheels and tires, lift, and then armor. For the kind of wheeling that I do, like I don't impact it very often, but it's like an insurance policy for me, so I feel like I have to have it, definitely.
Totally.
Up here, the kind of wheeling I do isn't the same as when I go down to Phoenix, and there's more like bigger boulders and rock trails, things like that.
Totally.
But I'll tell you, the thing that I've definitely gives me the most peace of mind and the happiest has been the engine guards. Like just not like we're out here today screaming at red line up and down these cinder cones, and having that and monitoring the trans and the rear diff, like it just gives me huge peace of mind. I think that's one of my favorite things on the vehicle.
Totally. It allows you to just beat on it and know that if it goes too far or if something's not happy, it'll let you know.
Right.
Sweet. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you love the 4.9s.
That's true. The 490s would be up there too. So I would do like the suspension, the 490s, and armor would probably be my top three.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to run 33s, having 4.9s really adds a lot more pep, a lot more confidence going up hills.
Yeah, if you're at sea level, I know that you can get away with it, but I live at 7,000 feet elevation, and they make a big difference.
Totally.
You know, I think the rule of thumb is you lose 3% horsepower per 1,000 feet. So this is already down about 20% where I live. So every little thing that I can do to help turn those 33s helps.
Totally. That's significant. Well, Marco, thanks so much for showing us your rig. Thanks for what you do with LusoOverland. We'll be doing a whole video of your operation there. And yeah, thanks for showing us Yoshi.
You got it.